According to neuroscience, the human brain does not decline after 50% in the way most people believe. What changes is not intelligence, not learning capacity, and not attention itself. What changes is how the brain prioritizes attention. Multiple longitudinal brain imaging studies show that after midlife, the brain undergoes a structural and functional reorganization. This process is known as neural efficiency optimization. In simple terms, the brain begins to conserve energy. The younger brain uses attention broadly. It explores widely. It responds quickly to novelty. The mature brain does the opposite. It becomes selective. It filters more aggressively. It refuses to allocate focus unless the input passes a relevance threshold. This is not degeneration. This is refinement. Functional MRI studies demonstrate that after 50, the prefrontal cortex reduces unnecessary activation. The brain no longer fires multiple networks simultaneously unless required. This is why multitasking becomes harder. Not because the brain cannot do it, but because the brain chooses not to. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. The mature brain is optimized for decision quality, pattern recognition, long-term outcome evaluation, not for constant stimulation. However, modern environments demand the opposite. Notifications, rapid content, shallow tasks, and continuous switching overload attentional control systems. This creates a mismatch between brain design and environmental demand. Neuroscientists refer to this as cognitive friction. Cognitive friction does not reduce intelligence. It reduces sustained attention. This is why many people after 50 say, "I feel mentally sharp, but I can't focus like before." Science confirms this experience. Attention is controlled by multiple systems: the prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, dopaminergic signaling pathways. After midlife, dopamine release becomes more context-dependent. The brain no longer releases motivation chemicals simply in response to urgency or pressure. Instead, dopamine release depends on meaning and predictability. This is why forced focus fails. Trying to concentrate through pressure activates the stress response. Cortisol increases. The amygdala becomes more active. When the threat system activates, the brain shifts resources away from focus toward vigilance. Focus and threat cannot coexist. This is a critical scientific point. Most people never learn. Focus after 50 is inhibited by stress, not enhanced by effort. Another key factor is working memory load. Research shows that older adults process unresolved thoughts differently than younger adults. The mature brain is less capable of ignoring open cognitive loops. Unfinished tasks, vague plans, and emotional ambiguity occupy working memory. This reduces attentional bandwidth. The brain is not distracted. It is busy. When working memory is overloaded, the brain prevents deep focus as a protective mechanism. This is why clearing mental clutter restores focus so quickly in older adults. It is not motivational. It is neurological. Sleep architecture also changes after midlife. Slow-wave sleep becomes shorter. This affects synaptic pruning and memory consolidation. When sleep quality drops, attentional stability drops with it. This does not mean the brain cannot focus. It means focus becomes more dependent on biological rhythm. Timing matters more. Now, morning focus windows become narrower, but deeper. Afternoon cognitive fatigue arrives faster if energy is mismanaged. Science does not show decline. Science shows dependency. Focus after 50 becomes dependent on context, emotional state, cognitive clarity, biological rhythm. When these are aligned, focus quality is often superior to younger adults. Studies consistently show that older adults outperform younger adults in tasks requiring sustained attention, error monitoring, strategic thinking. The myth is that focus weakens with age. The reality is that focus becomes conditional. If you are watching this because you want to protect your brain, sharpen your focus, and work with science instead of against it, this channel is built exactly for that purpose. Subscribe now, because everything ahead is grounded in real neuroscience, not trends or motivation. At this stage of life, understanding how your brain truly works is not optional. It is the difference between fighting your mind and finally using it at full strength. The next thing science makes clear is that focus after 50 is no longer driven by stimulation. It is driven by neural coherence. In younger brains, focus is often created by novelty. New inputs trigger dopamine spikes, which temporarily sharpen attention. This is why fast-changing environments feel engaging early in life. After midlife, that mechanism weakens by design. Dopamine receptors do not disappear, but their sensitivity changes. The brain becomes less responsive to shallow novelty and more responsive to predictable reward patterns. Neuroscience calls this dopamine tuning. This shift protects the brain from noise, but it also means that modern habits actively sabotage focus. Endless scrolling, constant alerts, fragmented tasks. These create dopamine volatility. Volatile dopamine prevents sustained attention. What replaces it? The mature brain shifts focus control to the default mode network and the salience network. This is critical to understand. The default mode network is not a distraction system. It is the brain's meaning processing network. After 50, this network becomes more influential in determining what receives attention. If an activity has no clear meaning, the brain quietly disengages. No struggle, no drama, just withdrawal of energy. People interpret this as "I can't focus anymore." In reality, the brain is asking a question it never needed to ask before. Why should I focus on this? This is why willpower fails. Willpower activates the prefrontal cortex under stress. Stress suppresses neural integration. Integration is required for sustained attention. So forcing focus actually fragments it. Functional connectivity studies show that high-focus older adults display greater synchronization between brain regions, not higher activation. This means focus comes from harmony, not intensity. One of the most overlooked scientific findings about aging brains is this: mental effort becomes less effective. Mental alignment becomes more effective. Alignment means clear goals, predictable structure, emotional neutrality. When these conditions exist, the brain enters a low-resistance state. This state is sometimes called flow, but neuroscience describes it more precisely as transient hypofrontality with network coherence. The brain reduces unnecessary self-monitoring. Attention stabilizes naturally. Another major factor is sensory gating. After midlife, the brain becomes more sensitive to background sensory noise. Unfiltered sound, visual clutter, and movement compete more strongly for attention. This is not weakness. It is heightened environmental awareness. However, if the environment is chaotic, focus collapses. This explains why simple changes, quiet rooms, reduced visual clutter, consistent lighting, produce dramatic focus improvements after 50. The brain is not asking for stimulation. It is asking for order. Research on attentional fatigue shows that recovery time increases with age, but recovery quality also increases. This means once focus is lost, it takes longer to return. But when it returns, it is deeper and more stable. This is why task switching becomes dangerous. Each switch taxes attentional recovery systems. Repeated switching creates cumulative fatigue. This is not psychological, it is metabolic. The brain consumes glucose and oxygen to reorient attention. After 50, metabolic efficiency improves for SUST. Aim tasks but declines for rapid shifts. Single tasking becomes biologically optimal. This is why deep focus sessions work better than long scattered workdays. Another scientific insight most people never hear. After midlife, attention is regulated by identity. Studies in cognitive aging show that self-concept increasingly influences neural allocation. The brain invests focus in activities aligned with identity and withdraws from those that are not. This is why focus feels effortless in some areas and impossible in others. The brain is conserving energy for what it perceives as self-consistent. When people fight this, they experience chronic cognitive friction. When they align with it, focus returns. If you want to understand how to work with this shift instead of exhausting yourself fighting it, this channel exists for that reason. Subscribe, not for motivation, but for clarity grounded in science. What follows next is not about tricks or habits. It is about the biological conditions under which focus naturally stabilizes after 50, and why most advice fails precisely because it ignores how the aging brain actually regulates attention, one of the most misunderstood facts about focus after 50 is this: the brain no longer rewards urgency. Earlier in life, urgency sharpens attention. Deadlines activate noradrenaline, which temporarily increases alertness and reaction speed. After midlife, that same chemical response produces a different outcome. Noradrenaline becomes less selective. Instead of sharpening focus, it broadens vigilance. The brain shifts into scanning mode rather than locking onto a single task. This is why pressure now feels mentally exhausting instead of motivating. Functional MRI studies show that under time pressure, older brains activate wider cortical regions than younger brains. More activation means more energy use. More energy use means faster cognitive fatigue. So when people say, "I used to work better under pressure," they're describing a neurochemical mismatch with their current brain. The solution is not relaxation alone, it is predictability. Predictability allows the locus coeruleus, the brain's attention regulator, to maintain stable firing patterns. Stable firing supports sustained focus. This is why routines suddenly become powerful after 50, not rigid routines, reliable ones, same time, same place, same cognitive demand. This consistency reduces the energy cost of task initiation. The brain does not have to decide. Decision-making is metabolically expensive. Every decision drains focus before real work even begins. This explains why starting feels harder than continuing. Once focus is established, the mature brain often maintains it better than a younger brain. But initiation becomes the bottleneck. That bottleneck is controlled by the anterior cingulate cortex. This region evaluates effort versus reward. After midlife, it becomes more conservative. It demands clearer value signals. If the value is vague, initiation stalls. This is why vague goals destroy focus. Be productive. Work on this. Get things done. These phrases provide no reward clarity. The brain cannot justify the energy expense. In contrast, specific outcomes activate reward prediction systems. Write 300 words. Review 5 pages. Finish 1 section. Precision unlocks focus. Another major shift involves cognitive load compression. With age, the brain becomes better at pattern recognition and abstraction. It compresses information more efficiently. This is not decline, it is refinement. But this also means poorly structured information becomes harder to tolerate. Messy instructions, cluttered interfaces, ambiguous expectations. These overload compression systems and scatter attention. This is why focus improves dramatically when information is simplified. Not because the brain is weaker, but because it has become more selective. Selective brains demand clean inputs. There is also a change in time perception. After 50, the brain prioritizes temporal coherence. It prefers longer, uninterrupted blocks over fragmented moments. This is not preference, it is neural optimization. Research on temporal integration shows that mature brains synchronize neural firing over longer windows. Interruptions break this synchronization. Recovery takes longer, but the depth achieved afterward is greater. This explains why older adults often excel at deep thinking, analysis, and strategy. Focus is no longer about speed, it is about continuity. Sleep architecture plays a decisive role. After midlife, slow-wave sleep becomes more fragile but more critical. This stage clears metabolic waste and restores attentional circuits. Disrupted sleep now impairs focus sharply, not gradually. Even small disturbances have outsized cognitive effects. Caffeine cannot replace this. Motivation cannot replace this. Another overlooked factor is emotional noise. After 50, the brain becomes less tolerant of unresolved emotional signals. Unprocessed stress consumes attentional bandwidth. This is why focus improves when emotional boundaries improve. Calm is not laziness. Calm is cognitive efficiency. The prefrontal cortex functions best when emotional interference is low. This is also why multitasking collapses faster after midlife. Multitasking was never efficient, but younger brains could mask the cost. Older brains reveal the truth. Task switching fragments attention and increases error rates. Single task focus is no longer a productivity choice, it is a neurological requirement. Movement also changes how focus works. After 50, short bouts of rhythmic movement improves cerebral blood flow and dopamine regulation. This stabilizes attention rather than overstimulating it. Long, intense workouts may exhaust focus, but gentle, consistent movement sharpens it. Finally, there is identity. After midlife, the brain responds strongly to self-concept. If a person believes, "I am someone who struggles to focus," the brain allocates fewer resources. If identity shifts to, "I protect my attention," neural allocation follows. Focus after 50 is not recovered by force, it is restored by alignment. Alignment with biology, alignment with rhythm, alignment with meaning. When this alignment is achieved, focus stops feeling fragile. It becomes quiet, stable, enduring. By midlife, the brain begins to operate under new efficiency rules. Neural networks that once thrived on novelty now optimize for reliability. This means that previously effortless attention must now be supported by deliberate scaffolding. The prefrontal cortex, which governs executive control, becomes more demanding. It requires clear cues, structured routines, and predictable environments. Disorganization and clutter create hidden cognitive taxes. Even minor distractions consume more mental energy than they did earlier in life. Studies using EEG and fMRI confirm that older adults display increased neural activation in multiple regions when performing the same tasks younger adults complete with minimal activation. This is not inefficiency, it is compensatory recruitment. The brain is reallocating resources to maintain performance. Understanding this mechanism is key to enhancing focus. The second factor is neurochemical modulation. Dopamine levels gradually decline after midlife. Dopamine governs motivation, working memory, and attentional flexibility. Lower dopamine means the brain demands stronger motivational signals to engage. This is why abstract goals fail and clear, immediate, and meaningful objectives succeed. When the brain recognizes value, it releases enough dopamine to initiate sustained cognitive effort. Without this, tasks feel arbitrarily difficult. Another change involves cortical thickness and synaptic density. The brain shrinks selectively in regions such as the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and hippocampus. But compensatory changes occur elsewhere, notably in the anterior cingulate and parietal cortices. This redistribution supports pattern recognition and strategic thinking. Focus, therefore, is not a matter of forcing attention but leveraging these reorganized networks. Structured task blocks and minimized decision points align with these shifts. Next, consider attentional inertia. Older brains benefit from longer engagement on a single task. Switching too frequently breaks neural coherence, reducing both accuracy and depth. Temporal integration, the ability to process information over extended periods, improves when cognitive tasks are predictable. This is why uninterrupted work sessions, sometimes 45 to 90 minutes, dramatically improve output. Sleep remains a major determinant of attentional capacity. Slow-wave sleep and REM cycles consolidate memory, repair synapses, and remove metabolic waste. Partial or fragmented sleep drastically reduces focus the next day. Notably, the locus ceruleus, which governs alertness, is highly sensitive to sleep disruptions. Even short periods of deprivation reduce attentional stability more than in younger adults. Emotional regulation is equally critical. The mature brain processes stress differently. The amygdala responds strongly to unresolved threats or emotional ambiguity. Attention is diverted toward internal emotional processing, reducing capacity for external focus. Meditation, reflection, and structured emotional routines significantly increase available attentional bandwidth. Physical activity further supports focus. Low-impact aerobic exercise, walking, and rhythmic movements increase cerebral blood flow, enhance dopamine signaling, and improve oxygenation. This supports sustained attention rather than overstimulating the system. Importantly, the brain now thrives on meaning. Tasks aligned with personal values engage deeper cognitive resources. Motivation alone is insufficient without relevance. Finally, identity shapes neural allocation. Beliefs about self-efficacy and focus directly influence how much cortical and subcortical attention is applied. Adopting a self-concept of a focused, disciplined mind triggers a cascade of neurochemical and structural support. The mature brain is not broken. It is optimized for selective attention, meaningful engagement, and strategic processing. When environmental structure, sleep, emotional regulation, and purpose are aligned, focus becomes effortless yet profound. This is how the brain after 50 becomes capable of depth, endurance, and precision that younger brains rarely achieve. Neuroscience confirms these principles. Targeted routines, predictable environments, and value-aligned tasks can maintain and even enhance focus well into later decades. The key is respecting the brain's evolved operational mode, rather than trying to force youthful strategies. Focus after 50 is achieved not by speed or intensity, but by intelligent alignment with biology, routine, and meaning. Attention becomes a refined, enduring resource rather than a fleeting, fragile one. By midlife, the brain's attentional control is increasingly tied to both internal and external cues. Internal cues include motivation, purpose, and emotional state. External cues include environment, structure, and sensory inputs. The interplay between these cues determines whether focus is maintained or fragmented. Research shows that mature brains respond more strongly to context than sheer effort. A clean, organized workspace, reduced distractions, and predictable scheduling enhance neural efficiency. Conversely, chaotic, overstimulating environments create hidden cognitive load. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt structurally and functionally, continues well into late adulthood. Repeated patterns of attention strengthen synaptic connections. Neglecting structured attention leads to weakening of these same pathways. Hence, Consistent practice in focused tasks is critical. This is not about working longer hours. It is about deliberate, attentive engagement aligned with neural strengths. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, benefits from progressive task challenges. Tasks should be incrementally more complex, requiring planning, problem-solving, and decision-making. This stimulates dendritic growth and strengthens the myelination of axons, enhancing signal speed and precision. Physical exercise complements these processes. Aerobic activity, weight-bearing exercises, and balance-focused movements increase cerebral perfusion. Blood flow brings oxygen, glucose, and neurotrophic factors like BDNF, essential for learning and focus. Sleep continues to play a pivotal role. Deep sleep facilitates synaptic pruning, removing unnecessary connections and enhancing signal-to-noise ratio. REM sleep consolidates procedural and emotional learning. Disrupted sleep erodes focus, not just in the morning, but across entire cognitive networks. Emotional regulation cannot be overstated. The amygdala, prefrontal cortex, and anterior cingulate cortex coordinate differently after 50. Stress hijacks attentional resources, shifting focus inward and reducing external task engagement. Mindfulness, meditation, and structured reflection optimize this network. They maintain a calm baseline, allowing the mature brain to allocate resources efficiently. Nutrition also influences cognitive control. Omega-3 fatty acids, polyphenols, and antioxidants support synaptic integrity and reduce neuroinflammation. Micronutrients like magnesium, zinc, and vitamin D are critical cofactors for neurotransmitter synthesis. A deficiency subtly reduces neural responsiveness, making focus more fragile. Social engagement further enhances attention. Collaborative problem-solving, meaningful conversation, and purposeful community involvement stimulate executive networks. Social isolation, on the other hand, diminishes prefrontal activation and leads to attentional deficits. Finally, mindset and self-identity play decisive roles. Believing that focus naturally declines accelerates disengagement. Adopting the identity of a deliberate, disciplined, and attentive person triggers neural reinforcement. This belief system modifies dopamine signaling, prefrontal engagement, and synaptic consolidation. The mature brain is remarkably adaptive. When lifestyle, environment, emotion, sleep, nutrition, and identity are aligned, focus becomes a refined, high-precision skill. It is sustained, resilient, and capable of depth that younger brains rarely exhibit. The strategic allocation of attention allows over 50 adults to process information more deeply, solve complex problems more effectively, and maintain cognitive clarity even under pressure. Science confirms that deliberate practices rooted in the brain's natural operational principles produce measurable improvements in attention, working memory, and mental endurance. The mature brain is not slowing down, it is reorganizing for efficiency, resilience, and meaningful engagement. Those who leverage these principles experience sharper thinking, better decision-making, and sustained mental clarity well into later decades. Focus is no longer about resisting distraction through brute force. It is about aligning the mind, body, and environment to the brain's evolved operational blueprint. When these conditions are met, attentional control after 50 becomes not only possible but optimized. The result is a cognitive capacity that is deeper, more precise, and more enduring than what was possible in younger adulthood. By this stage, all the mechanisms discussed, neuroplasticity, sleep, exercise, nutrition, emotional regulation, and mindset, converge to define the mature brain's operational power. The key insight is that attention, memory, and cognitive speed are not static after 50. They are dynamically shaped by daily behaviors, environmental inputs, and mental frameworks. Emerging research shows that even subtle improvements in lifestyle can lead to measurable changes in synaptic density, cortical thickness, and connectivity. For instance, a 12-week structured cognitive and physical training program increased prefrontal activation in participants over 55, improving working memory and decision-making. Another study demonstrated that consistent mindfulness practice enhances attention span and reduces age-related decline in executive function. Sleep hygiene remains non-negotiable. Regular, sufficient, and high-quality sleep facilitates waste clearance via the glymphatic system, reduces neuroinflammation, and consolidates learning. Even one disrupted night can subtly impair prefrontal networks, making attention more fragile. and memory encoding less efficient. Physical activity acts as both a catalyst and maintenance mechanism. Aerobic exercise increases cerebral blood flow, supplying oxygen and glucose to neurons. Resistance training improves insulin sensitivity and supports hormone regulation, indirectly benefiting cognitive processes. Balance, coordination, and proprioceptive exercises stimulate cerebellar and cortical networks, maintaining neural integration. Nutrition must be intentional. Omega-3 fatty acids, polyphenols, and antioxidants maintain synaptic integrity and reduce oxidative stress. B vitamins, magnesium, and zinc support neurotransmitter synthesis and cognitive resilience. Hydration and blood sugar stability also influence attentional control and executive function. Emotional intelligence and stress management are crucial modifiers of cognitive health. Cortisol dysregulation impairs hippocampal function and attentional networks. Mindfulness, breathing exercises, and purposeful reflection strengthen prefrontal regulation and maintain calm focus. Social engagement remains a profound enhancer of cognitive function. Interactions that require problem-solving, empathy, and verbal reasoning stimulate frontal and temporal networks. Isolation leads to decreased prefrontal activity, slower processing, and reduced attentional flexibility. Finally, self-identity acts as the internal driver of cognitive behavior. Seeing oneself as an attentive, capable, and resilient thinker triggers engagement of neural circuits aligned with those behaviors. Belief in cognitive potential influences dopamine signaling, motivation, and persistence. The mature brain is thus not simply a survivor, it is a transformer. When all elements, environment, physical health, emotional regulation, nutrition, social interaction, and mindset, are aligned, attention and focus reach new levels of precision and endurance. The brain's adaptive architecture allows for deeper processing, sharper decision-making, and sustained mental clarity. This is not about fighting age, it is about leveraging the natural evolution of the brain after 50. Cognitive decline is not inevitable. Instead, a deliberate, structured approach to brain health produces resilience, strength, and mental acuity that can surpass what was possible in youth. For those committed to this process, Life After 50 offers an opportunity to think more clearly, remember more effectively, and focus more powerfully than ever before. Your brain is capable of extraordinary adaptation, and the strategies outlined here provide a blueprint for maximizing that potential. If you want to continue enhancing your brain, start integrating these practices today. Focus on structured attention, consistent exercise, mindful sleep, proper nutrition, emotional regulation, and purposeful social engagement. Your mature brain will reorganize, strengthen, and reward your commitment with clarity, precision, and resilience. Thank you for watching Smart Brain Senior. If you found this video valuable, subscribe now to protect your brain. Stay sharp and continue discovering practical ways to keep your mind young and powerful. Your journey toward cognitive mastery starts here.